Knowing something's not right and still loving the person is the worst. It's the worst. Leaving when you still love someone is brutal. But again, I'm a big fan of intuition. If you can learn to listen, to get quiet enough to listen, she'll tell you. You always, you know what I mean? Whenever you start negotiating with yourself, that's when it's time to go.
Ariana, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh, Ariana, I'm so glad that you're here. You're someone who doesn't just release music, you create emotional worlds for people to step into. From your early EPs to Constellations to your immersive light and space shows, you've built a career around one core feeling. That moment when a room full of strangers suddenly feels connected, which I absolutely love. You've toured the world, shared stages with incredible artists, gone viral for your piano chats, and now you're entering a new chapter with the Breakup Variety Hour. But what stands out most is your belief that art can open people up, unify them, and give them a place to feel alive again. I'm looking forward to exploring the experiences that shaped you, the emotions behind your work, and the philosophy that drives everything you create.
Oh my gosh, thank you. What a beautiful intro. Thank you so much.
Well, Ariana, so I want to go back to the very beginning of your journey, back to childhood. I read that you said that a lot of people always ask you, when was that pivotal moment that you realized you wanted to be a performer? And you can't narrow it down to just one moment in particular. But what I would like to do is, can you take us back to your earlier years where you first started to get a sense that that's what you wanted to do? But maybe the first, and I know that's hard to go back to a specific moment, but what if we go back to the first real step you took to pursuing this as a career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was one of those kids who was like in a dance class at 3. Like if you talk to my mom, she'd be like, who could stop her? It was always, as I think the part of the reason that I have a hard time being like, I don't remember when, is because it was like, I always was that way. I was I was like a kid, like a 5-year-old or 4-year-old in my parents' house, putting on performances for like imaginary friends. Literally, I like had imaginary friends, which tells you a little bit about me. But like I had imaginary friends, and I was like, okay, my friends Sarah and Michael from London are here. For my mom was like, how the hell? Like, who is Sarah and Michael from London? Like, she's never been to London. Why does she know these people? Like, what's going on? So I was always that way. And I when I was like really little, I sat down. There was like a song on the radio. I think it was the Peanuts. The do 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 the theme song, and I heard it on the radio, and I came home and we had a piano in my house. I was really young, like 3 or 4, and I sat down and I just like started playing it. And my mom and dad were like, "Oh God, now great, now we have to like put her in piano lessons." They're very supportive, but they were very like, "Oh no, like we have to support her. Like, what are we gonna do?" So when I sort of say like I don't remember like getting the bug, because it just was around. And I had, like I said, very supportive family that was like, okay, let's sort of encourage her to go do that. And then when I was about maybe 10 or 11, I had a teacher. I started taking singing lessons. I'm from Long Island, so like all of this is in the suburbs of New York. And I started taking singing lessons. I was dancing. I was a dancer. And then this woman was like, well, can you sing? And I took singing lessons. And she said, well, there's a show on Broadway called Les Mis. You should audition. You're like the right thing for it. And that was the first time that anybody had ever sort of said to me, you should try to do this in some sort of like professional way. And that was really, I mean, you said go back. We went all the way back. Like that was really the beginning of me like working as a performer. I ended up through a whole series of events going and auditioning for an agent in New York City, and I started taking dance classes in New York, and I became like a child actor. I was never in Les Mis on Broadway, unfortunately. By the time we got to it, I was too old. But that was like really the beginning of me performing. And I was like taking dance classes in New York at Broadway Dance Center, and I got scouted to be in a dance company. And that was the beginning. I mean, I was working from when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I got my first job in theater when I was 13. So I started in theater and have been working since I was 11, 12, 11 was I got that job, 12. And I ultimately pivoted to music not until I was in college, but I was working as a performer and a actor up until I switched into music at about 19. So it's like, that's why I think it's hard for me to pinpoint, because it's more like I shifted from theater and working like that into being like, oh, I'm a songwriter, which was a active choice that I made.
That's really interesting, Ariana. And I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, because when you were saying how you would tell your parents, like, oh, my imaginary friends from London are here, and they were like, wait, what? Like, she's never been to London. It's so funny, because I remember being a kid too, telling my parents, like, one day I'm going to live in Los Angeles and New York City. And they were like, who is this kid? He's never been there. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
But what interests me is that I feel like when you feel called to do something really young and you have like a burning desire to pursue anything, but especially in the arts, I feel like it can lead to a little bit of what feels like maybe isolation or being a little misunderstood as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you went through that at all?
My family is not a performance family. Nobody does that. But my mom especially was like, go for it. She was like the most supportive, always my whole life was like, I just want you to have the biggest life that you can dream. And so I think I never felt lonely or crazy or anything really because of her, because she was like, let's do it, And she was like, my parents are business people. Like, they own businesses. They were like, she was like a working mom. My mom and dad were working. So she was like leaving work early to drive me to auditions. Like, I'll never forget that, like literally like driving through traffic to try to get places. Like, they were really in it with me. And I had friends in middle school that were also not in theater at all, but were also very supportive of me. So I got really lucky where I never needed anybody to like get it in the sense of like needing to be artists too, because I think I had people that just had like a lot of belief in me. And I'm also like I was a little bit of like a bat out of hell. Like, I think there wasn't a ton of stopping me. You know what I mean? I think it was sort of like, all right, we're going with her. So that was kind of, yeah. I don't think I felt sort of more of that, what you're talking about, until I was like in my 20s, when it was like, oh, my dreams are my own now. I have, not that my dreams were not mine, but when you're in your 20s, I think you start to really feel the responsibility of like, okay, how am I really going to make this my life? Like, how am I going to be able to like pay for dinner? How am I going to be able to, be an artist? And so I think that feeling you're talking about happened maybe later on in my life, which I think is a real blessing, actually.
I think so too. And I'm actually really glad that you're touching on this, because I think that, and a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in their 20s, just starting out in their careers, looking for inspiration or insights from people who have pursued their passions. And I think that this is a great thing to touch on, because it's true. Like, eventually you will arrive, unless you're in a very unique circumstance.
100%.
You will arrive at a moment in time where you're like, okay, this is my dream, but I also have to be practical, because got to keep the lights on.
100%.
When you arrived at this moment, Ariana, what mindset shift did you have to make in order to pursue your dream while mitigating fear?
Oh, good question. I think that the big misconception about fear and doubt is that you need to like eradicate it from your brain or your mind. And that's not real. That's not real. You just have to do it with it present. You have to do it scared. You have to do it with the doubt. And sometimes that's hard. And I think in my 20s, I had a lot of false starts in my career, and doubt sabotaged me so much. And I would be sort of gaining momentum, and in the back of my mind, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I felt like I didn't deserve certain success I was getting, or I've had a lot. I'm in my mid 30s now. I'm 36. And I've had a lot of sort of like momentum happening. You think something's going to go and then it kind of backslides. And then that happens a lot in artistic careers. And I can't stress enough that even if you can't see how it's going to come back around, nothing is for nothing. Everything that you do as an artist will feed into things that come later. It's not a fun reality of being an artist, I think, when you're sort of like, this is what the hell just happened. You know what I mean? You've like put all this work into something, it doesn't work out the way you thought it would, or something does work and you're like, wait, that worked? Like, I don't know, what's that? So, there's a lot of that in artistry, and it can lead to fear and feeling like, I don't know what's going on. And I think part of being an artist as like a life is getting comfortable with the uncertainty, getting comfortable with doing it, not knowing how it's going to go, getting comfortable with having the doubt and saying, okay, I hear you and I see you, but you're not running the ship. I'm running the ship. And that's a skill. That's a real skill to have. And I did not have that for a very, very long time. It took me a really long time, and it's still, some days the doubt is louder than other things. And so you have to learn how to kind of turn the volume down.
That's really well said, Ariana. And I think it's really important for people to hear this coming from somebody like you, because you're still so young and you've already had such an impressive career. And I think that a lot of people, especially when you're just starting, I know I've experienced this just based on what you said. I'm sure you've experienced this to some degree, where when things feel hard, you almost think, well, maybe this isn't the right path for me. Maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But just because something is hard doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it.
100%. Oh yeah. Well, and I think there's two sides of it too, right? There's like, just because something is hard doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. And also it's okay to allow things to be easy. Like I feel like I did that a lot too, where it was like, where things probably could have been easier. You know what I mean? I could have looked for maybe the path of lesser resistance. And then there were some times where I was muscling through, and that was necessary. It's like a lot of learning how to listen to your intuition, which again is a big skill. And I'm sure I could have avoided a lot of difficult situations if I was listening a little bit better to my intuition, where she was like, I'm not sure this is the door for us. And I was like, I'm banging the door down. She was like, maybe we should go to the other door. And I was like, it's gotta be this door. And it's that, right? And we get this sort of like tunnel vision with it again, I think a skill set to we say, okay, the success has to look like this, right? There's so much, especially on the internet now, with like, you have to define your success, and if you want to manifest something, you have to see it. And yes, I believe in all those things, and I think that's true. But I also think it's like, well, why don't you get in touch with the feeling? What does success feel like to you? Because in reality, let's say your pinnacle moment for a musician is selling out Madison Square Garden or something. Well, what's the feeling you think you're going to get? Because maybe there's 100 other opportunities that aren't that, but might be as big or even bigger or totally different, that will also give you that feeling of success. And if you're spending so much time tunnel vision on the one thing, you might be closing yourself off to all these other cool things that you didn't know could even happen. And again, I've come to learn that through being so tunnel vision and being like, oh wow, I probably could have loosened up a little bit and gotten some other things come to me. So I've learned that through experience, and I think there's kind of that's the only way to learn it. But it's important to be focused, and it's also important to be sort of like open to things happening that you can't imagine. If you can be in tune with kind of how you want it to make you feel, which I know is hard. It's not an easy thing to do.
Ariana, that's one of my favorite things that anybody has ever said on this show, period. I'm serious.
Thank you.
That's actually really interesting. Getting in touch. I've never heard anybody say this before. Getting in touch with the feeling that your dream will evoke within you, and then being open to the idea that maybe other opportunities that might be even bigger than the very specific dream that you have can evoke the exact same thing. That's actually really cool and a very interesting perspective.
I think that we get so caught up in the one definition of it. And then, I've seen it happen all the ways. I've seen people get the exact thing that they dreamt of, and the cliche. It doesn't feel how you thought it would. And then you have to reckon with that. And I've had that in my own life too. I've gotten some of my bucket list stuff, which has been amazing. And you're sort of like, oh no, I don't feel, this doesn't feel so great, or this doesn't feel the way I thought it would. And then there's other things that happen and you're like, this is so cool. So I've learned that from experience and from seeing it happen with other creative people that I know. And it's like there's a lot of touch points to success that you have to define for yourself. And yes, you have to keep the lights on and you have to pay your bills, and that's one version of success. But there's a lot of other things that go into that. And you might be in a position where you are making money doing something that doesn't feel so good. So there's that, it's a lot to account for. I think that exists in all fields, not just creativity, but I think in the arts, there's a lot of chatter about kind of those specific things.
And Ariana, you were just talking a little while ago about how there have been some moments where you look back and you think, man, if I had listened to my intuition, it could have been much easier.
Sure.
Do you have one that comes to mind that you can share with us?
Sure, of course. I made a show. I made an immersive show, Light and Space, and it was like a hybrid of a concert and a like immersive theater. At the time, there was a show in New York called Sleep No More. That was like a very sort of successful immersive theater show where the audience is like not in the proscenium. The audience is not in chairs. They're like walking around a whole space. They took over like a whole, for Sleep No More, it was like a hotel. They called it the McKittrick Hotel. And then the actors like come throughout the room and they like, it happens around you. So I was really inspired by that. There was a lot of stuff going on in London. I was living in London at the time. An event called Secret Cinema, which does a very similar thing, but with movies. They like recreate the entire movie set and you like move around and the characters are there. It's amazing. And so I was like, I want to do this for music. And I felt very inspired by that. And I had to do it. I was like single-mindedly focused. I mean, I was insane. I was like an insane person. And I had to do it at House of Yes in New York. I had to do it here. It had to look like this. And it was hard. It was a big boat to push. And I needed it to have lights and I needed it to have all these things and it needed to have a live band. And when I look back and I remember, and it was successful. We sold it out. Like we sold out the first one we ever did. We sold out a residency after that. It was really going great. And I was burnt out. I was exhausted. And it was not sustainable. And I built it exactly in my vision and it was great. And I think back and I'm like, girl, how are you going to do that for 10 years? I would have lost my soul. And COVID happened. And we were about to do a year at House of Yes in Brooklyn. And I had done a partnership with Live Nation and we were doing all this really cool stuff. But it was like me producing the show with like, there were 10 dancers in the show. It was like a big production. And my intuition was like, you have not built this sustainably for yourself, for your like human self to be able to do this. And in a way, COVID was a blessing for me in this one specific sense. COVID's certainly not a blessing. That I had to shut it all down, which was like devastating, which everybody went through, obviously their own versions of this. And what I could see in the wake was, were there other ways you could have built this that were more sustainable? Did it have to be a full band? Did it have to be did it have to be all these things? What if I was listening to myself along the way? And maybe it would have looked a little different, could have been as successful, but I would have protected myself. I would have, the person that it was at the expense of was me. And I couldn't have known that until it was over, and who would have known what would have happened. But I was willing to sacrifice myself because it needed to be exactly what I wanted. And I think we as artists do that a lot. The person we sacrifice is us. And that's not sustainable. You're not going to be able to keep making stuff if you do that. And that was a big lesson I learned from that experience.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, because it's nice to hear too, like, of course, sorry that you went through that because I know it's difficult, but it is, once you get to the other side of a challenge and you can look back and you can identify the lesson, I think that in a way that our challenges that we've been through are almost worth it because they strengthen us moving forward.
Totally. Well, and also that was an interesting one because normally it's like you would think I would say something that was attached to a career failure. And this was interesting because it was actually a career success. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, be careful the way you make stuff, because if it goes well, you have to live inside of those things. So it was a big lesson in learning how to take care of myself, because I was actively ignoring this inner voice in me that was like, you cannot sustain this. You're gonna have like, and I remember my mother being like, I am worried about you. This is not, you're not good. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to do, and I might have done it. You know what I mean? The show might have been huge. We might have been selling out thousands, but who knows? And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I would not have stopped. Had COVID not stopped me, I would have ignored that voice in me until something would have stopped me. You know what I mean? Then that's what happens. You get sick or, something like that. So it was interesting because it showed me that you can make mistakes for yourself even when it's going well, just because it's, that's something. And that was a big thing to think about.
When things are going well, but they're hard, if you complain about it, people immediately are like, why are you complaining about this? You're so ungrateful. It's like, you can be going through a bunch of really great things, but because of what's required of you to sustain these things, you get exhausted, you get stressed or whatever, right? You're still human.
And I loved that show. I mean, I love that show, and I would happily bring that party back. People would say to me, like what you said at the beginning of this call, people would be like, this is the best night out I've had in 100 years. And I loved making that. I loved being at those parties and seeing people lost in the night. I loved it. And so it also fed me, it was amazing. It was just, I had not built a sustainable model for myself. And when it came time to do, like when everything had shut down and I started doing my piano chat videos I would like sit at the piano and play and talk. That was something I thought about. And I had actually a friend of mine gave me that advice again when I was starting to get on TikTok and make videos. He was like, hey, look, whatever you make sure you enjoy the process of what you're making. Make sure the process of how you make you're good with. Because if it goes well, you're going to do it all the time. It's going to be the thing you do. And it was like coming back to the thing I had said before, where every lesson is for something. This lesson I had learned previously, 2 years before on a very large scale, was now sort of showing up again. And I had an opportunity to kind of learn from what I had done. And I was really glad that I did, because those piano chats started going viral and I made a lot of piano chats and I love making them. They're so fun. So I get to I put on cute outfits and I do my makeup and I chat at the keyboard. So you learn and you apply it. Nothing is ever lost. And I think I loved making those big productions, and what I learned from something that was on a grand scale, I then used for something that was alone in my house as a selfie video. So the principles apply, I think.
And also when you're creating a situation for yourself that's not sustainable, I feel like when you're super young, like in your teens and in your 20s, you can sustain it for a long time. And then suddenly, I remember everybody would tell me, once you turn 30 hits different. Like, things are not going to feel as easy with your body. And I thought, no, not for me. I'm different. Like, not for me. But then I turned 30 and I was like, oh, I get it. And creating a situation where it's sustainable for you, just like on a purely, forget the emotional and the psychological level, but on a physical level is also important, because you will burn out, and all kinds of things can happen if you burn out. So I think you brought
Totally.
up several amazing points here.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think especially for anybody who's in their 20s listening in the internet era. And when I started making music, the output for creatives was not what it is now. I mean, the expectation on creative people to understand, not only to find yourself as an artist, to know who you are, one step back, know who you are as a human being so that you can figure out who you are as an artist. So then you can brand yourself to be able to create micro digestible versions of yourself in 45 to 1 minute and 30-second videos so that it can hit to promote like larger artist projects is an insane expectation of artists. It's really an unbelievable thing. And artists are good at it. Artists are getting good. Artists are adaptable, and they are doing it and are feeding the beast, which is why the expectation and the appetite is still there. But it is important now more than ever for artists to protect themselves, because that's an insane output. You have to like do the art, whatever that is, whether you're a musician or an actor or whatever. So you actually have to be doing that, making an album, writing songs, that whole process. And then on top of it, you're online posting videos every day, interacting with people, building a following. It's also an unsustainable model. And somehow artists are doing it because that's the landscape. So I think, yeah, it's important the algorithm will still be there. You can take a week off and put your phone down.
No, Ariana, you're totally reframing my perspective on a lot of these things, because that is so true. It's so different now. I didn't even...
It's so crazy.
It's interesting because I never really considered that like at the forefront of my mind, yet I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm making my shorts, I'm publishing everything, like, but I didn't even think of it that way. But you're right. The landscape for creatives has totally changed because of social media.
Think about this podcast. You came up with the idea for this podcast. You source guests, you do all the scheduling, you know what I mean? You sit and you actually do the podcast, which is amazing. And then it's edited up, micro content, social media, all the back end stuff. And people who are not the ones creating that, it's an insatiable sort of like hole and pit. And I think that social media has created like a democracy in this, like a democratization of like content and anybody being able to create a platform, which I think is wonderful. And also it's a lot of noise. So the competition is like insane. I mean, it's billions and billions of pieces of content going up every day, every week. And it's really easy to feel like, how am I going to stand out? How is anybody going to find me? Going back to that self-doubt question, what's the point? All that. And feeling like if you skip a day, if you don't do it all, if something didn't work, that's a reflection on your artistry or if you're going to be able to make it. And it's hard. It's easy for me to be like, that's not true. But, I think that to try to separate your self-worth from that is more important now than ever for artists. And I didn't have to contend with that in my 20s, the way that artists do now.
Yeah, separating your sense of self-worth from the validation that you're getting online. And like, I can even speak to this. I mean, when I first started uploading this podcast, I think for the first 2 years, I got maybe 10,000 streams, if even that. And there were parts of me that thought, well, it's just going to be a hobby. Like maybe I'm not like super good at it, but I enjoy it. So I'm just going to continue to do it. And then just like suddenly, like from one day to the next, now the streams are like, and the views are in the millions and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Like, and I bring this up not to be boastful, because I'm actually like a very shy person in that regard. I'm not boastful in that sense. I bring it up though for the lesson of it. It's like, just totally. Because you're not getting the validation that you feel that you need to feel like you're good at what you're doing, at a specific moment in time, does not mean that it's not going to work out.
100%. And the algorithm is like, what is that? I don't even know. It's like, who is it? It's like Oz, pulling the levers. Like, it's so arbitrary. It's like, it feels like it's like slot machines, and it comes back again to defining how success feels to you and what that means. Because if you can do that, and it's really easy to get pulled away, really easy to get sort of like, the shine of something. And we all have that. I've had that, like a video goes viral and you're like, okay, yeah, okay, my video's viral, whatever. Like we're human beings and you should have that. You should celebrate that. It's just, I try at least now to do my best that no matter which way it goes, good or bad, that I don't put stock in it as best I can for my own artistry, for my own self-worth, and that so that I can stay as sort of like even as I possibly can without being like numb or disassociated. It's a balance. And I think it's a skill. And I think that I would imagine that people that are on like huge world stages, you know what I mean? If you were to talk to like a Sabrina Carpenter, somebody who's like really on the ride right now, I'm sure they would say something similar, that you have to learn how to do that. So when you're in your own little world and it's like your TikTok and you know what I mean, learning how to do that for yourself, I think it's important no matter what level you're at. And I know for a fact it does not go away. The more success you have, that does not change. It's just the highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Ariana, that's so funny that you bring this up, because this is something that has been talked about several times on this show. You have to maintaining that balance. I have heard so many people talk about this, and it's so true, because that, like, let's just say you have a video, it goes viral, or an album that's going crazy, right? And you're super excited. That state of euphoria that you're experiencing when all the likes and the views and the accolades are coming in, it's not sustainable. And what goes up must come down.
Totally. And it should. You don't need to live in that space. How are you going to go live your life to go make other stuff? What are you going to do? You're going to make an album, or you're going to make a thing about how successful something was? It's not real. That's not, this is like, you got to go live. And that's hard. And I think there's a fear of, will it ever happen again? Will I ever make something? There's the joke of like, every artist has their whole life to make their first album, and then you have only X amount of time after to make your second. And I have never been a major label artist. I have never had the music industry machine behind me. And so I have felt at a lot of times in my career, I am just pushing a boulder up a hill. When will there be momentum that doesn't feel like I have to sustain? When will the boulder feel like it's going downhill? And at times it feels that way, and other times it doesn't. And it's about finding your own center.
And Ariana, I want to go back a little bit, because we were talking about how you started off in theater and then you pivoted to music after that. What was the moment that you decided to pivot to music from theater?
I went to NYU. I was in Tisch, and I was auditioning a lot, and they don't love that when you go to school. They were like, you're in school. So I like missed my freshman orientation for like a callback, and then I missed my first day of school to film a commercial. And they were like, girl, this isn't going to work for us. And I was like, sorry. Okay. So I was like going to like auditions on my lunch break, and it was all quite stressful. And if I was like about to get something, I was like really excited, and then I wouldn't get it. And it was a very up and down. And the whole time I was doing that, I was writing music in my bedroom. I was just like writing on my piano, and I had been working, like I would go on the weekends to New Jersey to write with this producer. And I was doing it just for fun. I didn't even really, it like didn't clock to me, because I was so caught up in my own worlds of this auditioning in school. And a dance track I had written, it was like a trance song, super not my genre, got put on a compilation for a dance compilation record. BMG, the record label, I think it was BMG or Universal. Anyway, they were doing like a dance compilation record, and the song I had written got licensed to be on the record. I think I got like $200, like no money. And I was like, wait, you can get paid to do this? Like, what do you mean? This is amazing. I was like, I'm going to be a songwriter. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to audition anymore. I don't want to be stressed about, school. I want to just like go to school and I'll write music, and this is what I'm going to do. And I went and I studied abroad in Argentina with a friend of mine. And when I came back, I was like, I'm a songwriter now. And that was kind of how that happened. Joke on me that like, I thought that that's how that goes, that you like just write a song and somehow it finds its way onto a label thing. That's not how that works at all. But I got lucky, and it was the first time someone had given me money for music. And I was so excited that I was like, this is what I want to be doing. And if I look back, I had been writing music in my bedroom by myself the whole time. I just didn't ever think, sort of like what you said. I was like, I guess it'll just be a hobby. This is just what I love it, but who needs to hear that? And so obviously I just needed a very minor push to be like, I've abandoned everything else. I'm ready for this. And that was the beginning of writing. And then I called everyone I had ever met that I thought was adjacent to music in any way, shape, or form and asked them if they could connect me to people who were songwriters or whatever. And I just I wrote in any room that would have me. And that was how I started writing. I was like 19 or 20. Yeah.
And tell us the story about forming your band, Ariana and the Rose.
I had just started writing. I knew I wanted to have an artist project. I'm a solo project, even though it's Ariana and the Rose. And I love artists like Florence and the Machine and Marina and the Diamonds and those kind of people. I just thought they were like so cool that they were monikers. Like I thought that having something that was not your name. And I wasn't sure if maybe it would be a band or not. And my middle name is Rose. And my best friend Scarlett, I was like in my apartment brainstorming. And I was like, maybe it'll be like Ariana and the Starfish or Ariana and the Galaxy. And she was like, these are terrible names. These are so bad. She was like, just use your name. Rose is your middle name. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And that was it. And she named it basically. And Ariana and the Rose has been what it's been for the last long time. And I didn't really, I was doing that artist project, but I was also writing for other people. And I really didn't start seriously doing my artist project in the way that kind of it is now until like 2015. So 10 years ago.
Your journey started with Head versus Heart, followed by singles and the Retrograde EP in 2017. How do you feel that your artistic voice has evolved since then?
What a good question. God, Head versus Heart was so long ago. That's not on streaming platforms anymore. It's funny. In some ways it's changed so much. And then in other ways I look back at the music and I'm like, oh, like that was always my identity. Like when you're, the like core things of the things I love. I love synths. I love like lush sounds. I love artists like Kylie Minogue and Goldfrapp and Robin. And I always did. And that was always in the music that I wrote. And then I also love artists like Sarah Bareilles and Joni Mitchell and Ingrid Michaelson and Carole King. And so as I look back through my career, I can like see me sort of playing at both things and trying both things. And I think the only thing that's changed now is I feel way more comfortable trying stuff. I feel way less worried about being cool. I was very worried about being cool when I first started. That was a really big thing. I wanted people to think I was cool. And I felt so uncool. And I thought coming from theater was like so not cool. And I feel like theater is having a renaissance as like a genre right now, But at the time it was not. And it was like you had to like hide. I had to even the way I sang, I was like, I would try out different things so that it was like breathier, poppier, finding that voice and that sound. And the more I wrote and the more I did, the less I was worried about that. I think that's the thing that's changed the most. Now I make what I like, and I feel hopeful that it'll find the people that will like it too.
I think that putting yourself out there in an artistic sense, it's like at first you almost have this thing where it's like, I have to, all these things need to align and it needs to be perfect. Then I can put myself out there. But there's a lot of fear inside of you, at least subconsciously, right? But then once you start to put yourself out there over and over and over again, I really do think, and I think this is very specific to people doing anything artistic, I think that in doing that, you develop this resilience and this mentality of like, you know what? I don't care what people think. Like, I'm going to make what's cool for me. And if they like it, cool. And if they don't, cool.
Totally. I mean, and how many examples do we have of people being like, I just did that, and then it becomes like the most successful thing they've ever done? I mean, we might not have had the Brat album had Charlie XCX been like, I don't care about anybody anymore. I'm just making what I know is for me and my fans. And I think that especially now, again, with the internet, it's like our artistic journeys are like charted so much, right? Because it's every video, it's everything. And I used to have that fear myself that people would go back and they would see, you know, maybe something I wasn't as proud of, or a song, or something that I was like, oh God, like I'm better now, or no, that's not me, this is me. And I think that the thing I feel now is I'm like, well, they're all me. So I've had like 14 different hair colors. They're all on the internet. You can Google it and see them all. I've had purple hair. I've had blonde hair. I've had a pixie cut. They've all different album covers, all different things. And when I look at all the artwork I've ever made, or all of the like the catalog or the videos, they are a suite. They go together. They talk to each other. They tell a story. And I could have a song from 4 years ago blow up on TikTok, and I feel like I would love for someone to discover me from one era of my career and be able to go back and be like, oh shit, she's got all this stuff. Like, how cool, And so the idea that if it doesn't happen on the first go, or you change in between, I think it's cool. People love to look back. I love to look back at artists and see how they've changed. So why wouldn't you as an artist give yourself that grace?
It's so true. And getting to identify with artists at different points in their life is also really fun, because everybody's always changing. And so maybe like a certain part of you is going to really enjoy early Lady Gaga versus
literally, like, I'm sorry, but I know she was like we know now Joanne was not a good time for her, but like I was down for the hat, for the pink hat. Like, I loved that tour, like that's such a good example, and I think that when artists are mainstream, they have mainstream success, we love that, right? Taylor Swift just had an Eras tour. We love to go through that, but we don't give ourselves that grace when we feel when we haven't reached whatever version of success. But I think we should. I think we just totally should. And I think the idea that you put something into the world is brave and cool. And then to do it again and again and again is what being an artist is. You're doing it, you're going to do it anyway, whether you have the views or the eyes or not. So I say wear all of your versions proudly.
Well, Ariana, in 2019, your Constellations Phase 1 EP received acclaim from Billboard, Nylon, and the Huffington Post. What did that recognition at that point in your career mean to you?
Thanks. That's a good question. It was the first time it was the first time I felt like I had any recognition. I had been really trying to find my sound as a musician before that, with Head versus Heart and stuff. And that's sort of why I said, it really wasn't until 2015, which is when I made this music that you're talking about, that I felt like Ariana and the Rose as like an entity made sense to me. And so there was a song called Love You Lately on that record that was a duet with a group called RKCB. We're super talented guys. And we co-wrote the song together. We did a writing session, and it was sort of a style I hadn't totally explored. It had like a little bit of an R&B tinge in the melodies. And this song, just to this day, is my most streamed song. And it just found a home, and people loved it. And then there was also a song on that record called True Love, which I wrote very, very specifically for the LGBTQ community. I had been performing at Pride festivals my whole career, and I wanted a song that was for festivals, for prides, for this community. The first show I ever did was in a gay club at like 2 a.m. in Miami. Gay clubs are where I learned how to be a performer. Prides are where I learned how to, do festivals. And so having that song on that record, and then having that become a song that resonated inside of that community. And to this day, I have people, I was on tour the other day in like Portland, and someone was like, oh my God, True Love's on my playlist, girl. It's so cool to see that. And that song got put on like a bunch of like gym playlists. So like it was in all the gyms. So like literally like all the gay boys at the gym were like, girl, we love True Love. And I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, this is my home. And it was the first time that I felt like I was finding my people. And it was cool because it was happening in a couple different places. Love You Lately was sort of going to one group. And also there was like a couple choreographers that did a bunch of dances to it. So it like found its place in like the dancer community, which was really cool. And then True Love was doing its thing over here. And yeah, it was really rewarding to feel like the music was finding its people, which was the first time I had ever had that experience.
Well, and Ariana, I want to ask you about the first song on your new album, The Breakup Variety Hour. I Just Came to Say Goodbye. When I was listening to it, I thought, oh man, there's definitely a story here.
Sure, yeah.
Can you tell us the story behind writing that?
Sure. Yes, of course. So it's funny actually because the album's this concept album, 6 Steps to Get Over a Breakup. It's a one-woman show. It's like a mix of comedy and music, pop music and cabaret. And the show and the album is about this like one terrible breakup that I went through. But funny enough, that song and only that song is about a different person entirely. And he was the person I had dated after this sort of like bad breakup. And there's something really beautiful about knowing when to leave and like knowing when the time is up and when you've sort of run your course. And maybe it's because I was coming off the back of this like horrible heartbreak. And then this person was sort of this like soft place to land. I was like so at a low when we met. So I was like quite present. I think when you're like really heartbroken, as much as you're in pain, it like makes you really present. You're like in the world, because it forces you have to like every day you wake up and you're like, oh, I still feel horrible. And so this person had sort of showed up in my life and I was not trying to date someone and we had dated for longer than I had intended. And I was like, I know that this has run its course and we could stay till the bitter end, but I don't want to remember you like that. I want to leave while I can still love you. Cause I know that you're not meant to be my person. And you've been so a part of me helping me put myself back together. And so it was literally, I was like going to his apartment to like be like, this should be over. And he agreed. He was like, I agree with you. We should let it go. And we're still in each other's lives. We're still friends. And he knows the songs about him, I think. I'll double check. But it was it was sort of that, which is such a like a beautifully idealized version of a breakup. Never has happened before or since, to be clear. This was a one-time shot. But I just loved that idea of like the lyric is like, what if I never heal like I've done before? Like, I think we all have that fear, right? When you walk out of something, like, what if I never recover from this? And so that was kind of what it stemmed from.
In your opinion, when do you know it's the right time to leave a relationship?
Oof. I'm the queen of overstaying my welcome. I'm the queen of beating a dead horse. My friends make fun of me. They're like, girl, you can't go back. Like, I'm the one that we like left. I'm like, it's over. But then I'm like, but maybe, should we give it another chance? Maybe I didn't figure it out. I'm that girl. I'm working on not being that girl, but I have categorically not known when to leave. And oh God, I mean, I think a lot of times we know before we go. I mean, I think a lot of times we do know and we just don't want it to be true, which is so fair. It's loving someone, knowing something's not right and still loving the person is the worst. It's the worst. Leaving when you still love someone is brutal. But again, I'm a big fan of intuition. If you can learn to listen, to get quiet enough to listen, she'll tell you. You always know what I mean? Whenever you start negotiating with yourself, that's when it's time to go. That's a good way to put it, I think.
That's solid. And that is so true, because I think that we sometimes fall into a trap of like, we fall in love with the idea of a person. And when we're met with reality and it shatters that illusion that we have, we think, well, it must be because of me. Like maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe it's something that I did or said or didn't do. And when really sometimes you just have to come to the realization that, hey, this is not my person. I'm not actually in love with this person. Maybe I'm just in love with what I wish they were.
Totally. Oh my God, yeah. And like the idealized version of you too, right? Like that, like you like what or the plans you'll make or the life you'll have or whatever it is. And sometimes I've even had situations, and I've gotten better at this as I've gotten older, where your intuition is like, this isn't where you're supposed to be. And learning to listen to that and not necessarily needing to like know why, and just being like, I just know in my heart that this isn't it. And I had a situation, the most recent relationship I was in, where nobody did anything wrong, nobody was bad. You know, we really cared for each other, and it was good. It just wasn't. We just weren't right. It just wasn't right. And learning to say, I love you and I want you to have what you deserve, and we aren't here to build that together is hard to do. But what if you can, I am not great at it, but that's the advice I would give. I'm going to try to learn how to live by it.
And Ariana, you said that art can be joyful, serious, smart, accessible, and contradictory all at once, just like we are.
I love that.
What contradictions within yourself do you embrace through your own art?
Oh my God. That's cool that I said that. I love that I said that. I forgot. I agree. I agree with her. What contradictions? I think that, I think that you can be deeply sad and very funny. And I think that you can be super compassionate and like stand your ground. I think that, art is when all of the things you feel exist at once. So rarely is something binary. And I think good art allows for like many truths to be real at once. You can be so mad and angry at someone or something, but love them deeply and be attached, deeply. And you can walk away and be shattered, but be empowered and strong. Like those things, like the idea that vulnerability and strength go together, that softness and boundaries go together. Like I'm a big believer in multiple things being true at once. And those would be the biggest contradictions. And saying things like with your full chest and also not having a single clue. Knowing what you don't know and believing in what you believe in. And then also being like, you know what, I learned more and I changed my mind. I think is cool. I love people that can be like, I thought one thing and then I learned more, or I lived more, or I talked to someone who had a different lived experience than me and it changed my mind on something. I try to live like that. So those would be my things.
And Ariana, for someone who's never experienced your work, how would you describe the emotional world of Ariana and the Rose?
Really vibrant and a big swirl. And it's a very take what you want experience. Take what you need. That's what I would say. It's very take what you need.
And Ariana, after almost 2 decades in music, how do you define success now?
Ooh, good question. I define success as feeling like you're where you're supposed to be. That feeling of I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That is a feeling that I look for as a center, and making things that I believe in with people that I believe in and who believe in me.
And Ariana, what is the biggest lesson you've learned throughout the course of your career so far?
At the end of the day, you put your head on the pillow. So make the life you want to make for yourself.
Love it. And Ariana, where's the best place that people can keep up with you, your work, and everything you have going on?
All the places, social media, Instagram, all that. And then they can also sign up for my mailing list. And I send out updates and, like I do previews for the mailing list. The mailing list is a very community-based active place if anybody wants to sign up for it.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to include all the links to your social media profiles as well as your website in the episode notes. So anybody who wants to go check out Ariana, I highly encourage you to do it. You could easily do that by clicking below. And Ariana, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice specifically tailored to you and your life's journey, what would it be?
Oh my God, what a good question. I'd say you're fab, girl. You are fucking fab. Live it. Live it out of 10. Don't let anybody tell you different. That's what I would say.
Well, Ariana, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today. This was so much fun. It really was a pleasure getting to meet you.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughtful questions. They were so lovely. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.